Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming. In Italy, uh, I'm very honored to join a program that we usually do in school. It's a project that is in collaboration with a Jesuit association, and we are an interreligious team. We are Buddhists, and there are Jewish, and there are Muslims, Orthodox, Hindus, and we go to school and talk to students from 11 years to 18 years about our faith. We kind of witness our faith. And there is no words to describe how it's a bliss to join this program for me and for the students. To try to open their minds and try to make them used to cultural and religion diversity. I could talk for hours about this project, but it's not the topic of my teaching. Sometimes it's very easy, sometimes it's quite difficult. Sometimes I go to very rich schools, private schools, in which there are students with suit and tie, and sometimes we go to the slums when there are very problematic situations, gypsies and boys with very characterial problems. And most of the time, the students, they don't know anything about Buddhism. It's kind of open their mind. And sometimes they have such a kind of a narrow mind because they never meet something different. And they can only think with stereotype, with cliche. And when they look at diversity, they can only look basing to their frameworks of the culture they know. So most of the time they make me such questions. What is your Bible? What's the name of your Pope? And so I say we have no Bible, so we say we have no Pope. And sometimes they will say we have sacraments. What have you? Oh. And sometimes they say we have heaven, we have hell, and what about you? And so maybe I lost my temper and say, okay, in Buddhism we have maybe 2 or 3 hells and something like 2 hells, heavens, because it's like this. But they're not eternal, you know. And this is the topic of my talk this morning: hell and demons. It's a kind of stereotype I have to confront myself. When I was a child, I used to spend many hours in the living room in my house and see the collection of books of my father. And I like to stay alone by myself and look at those books. One of the books that attracted me the most was an edition of the Divine Comedy of Dante. And I spent hours looking at the images. It was a beautiful edition with is illustrated by Gustave Doré. I don't know if you know him. It's a very famous French artist and printmaker of the 19th century. And it was kind of fascinating to see these beautiful and very strong images, especially when the hell section with these naked bodies twisted in paint, like moving, like making a crazy dance, or fierce, ugly demons with long-handled forks, and the landscape was amazing with huge dark rock craters and scaring forests or wasted acid plants. It was amazing. Then when I went to the paradise section, it was a little boring. All of this monotonous and cloudy landscape, and all these enraptured creatures dressed in white long shirts. It was not so fun. So I prefer to look at the health section than the paradise section. Uh, uh, it's like Mark Twain when he says, I would like to go to heaven for the climate and hell for the company. And since I was a child, I always had a fascination for demons, ghosts, horror movies, Japanese and Chinese ghost stories. And so it's a kind of topic that I always think about it. And still today in Christianity, hell and the devil, they are really present. It may seem strange, but from time to time, the Pope himself talks of the devil, especially Johannes Paulus II. He was always making very insisting on think of the devil. Hell exists. Devil exists. Don't forget about it. It's like you cannot believe in God if you don't believe in devil. They are very linked each other. And still today, in Italy, they practice some exorcism. There is a very famous exorcist in Italy, Padre Giovanni Amort. It's a kind of stereotype of the exorcist as very, very fierce with a dark face, and he's very, very famous. He writes a lot of books, and you can find a lot of his books in the bookshops. In some more progressive Christian environments, hell is seen like a place of the mind, like a state, like a not like a physical place, but like an attitude. It's an attitude in which the distance, the separation from God, is itself the cause of the pain and the pain itself. It's like in Milton's Paradise Lost, in which the fallen angel says, which way I fly is hell. Myself, I am hell. Because of the separation of God, he lives in hell. So hell is not a physical place, it's a state of mind. Then, what about Buddhism? In Buddhism, we have the Rokudo, the 6 realms of existence. It's the different, how can I say, different worlds, different universe, different place in which someone can reincarnate after he's dead, or someone can transmigrate. It's a kind of different stages. It goes from the worst one to the kind of most fortunate one. And starting from the low side, we have the Naraka, who is hell. And there are 2 kinds of Naraka. There is the cold hell and the hot hell. And it's a kind of hell like we can imagine with the various set of tortures. Then there is the realm of the Gaki, the hungry ghost. There are creatures that, because of their previous karma based on greed, they are born into this kind of states in which they are always searching for food, always craving for food, but they cannot eat because their mouth is so little, and their belly is so huge, so they continually suffer from hunger. Then there is the realm of animals. Realm of animals, animals are characterized by living by instinct, so they don't have a kind of awareness. They are constantly struggling for searching food, and sometimes they are the food, so they have to escape. Then there is the realm of humans. Humans, you know very well. Our life is sometimes full of joy, sometimes full of suffering, some sorrow. Then there is the realm of the Ashura, the fighting ghost. The Ashura are some kind of semi-gods, very powerful, very fierce. So they are full of supernatural powers like superheroes, but they constantly fight each other. They constantly struggle for power, for supremacy. And then there is the last one, the Deva, the semi-gods, the heavenly beings, the beings that lives in a kind of blissful state. Each one of these six realms are all characterized by suffering. Starting from the hell up to the heavenly beings, these realms are characterized by suffering. Even the heavenly beings, they suffer because they live in such beautiful condition, but they know that they will change. When the karma is going to make them change, they will go down because there is no up. They can only go down. So they're suffering. And the realm of humans is the more favorable for practicing the Dharma. Because we suffer, but not so much. We experience pleasure, joy, but not so much. So we can think about it. The creature from the lower realm, they suffer too much. They are suffering themselves like Milton's fallen angel, I'm in hell. They cannot think about practicing the Dharma. The beings of the upper levels, they are too good to think about Dharma. Only we, that we experience some kind of suffering, some kind of joy, we can be aware of it and we can practice Dharma. But the stranger thing is if you see the traditional painting of the sixth realm, in which there is Mara, the demon of death that holds the rings of suffering, in each kind of the sixth realm, Buddha is in there. Buddha is always present. Now, there is a problem. If you ask me, do you really believe that the sixth realm exists? I would say, no. I don't know. I don't even believe in reincarnation, maybe. I don't know. This is a kind of problem that we have to confront when we get into Buddhism or some religion that is different from our cultural mind frame. Because when we approach our religions, religion brings with it a lot of belief that belongs to that particular culture. So I wonder, do we have to take the whole package? Do we have to take the whole stuff? I don't know. Here in the West, when we talk about the sixth realm, we used to interpret them as a kind of allegory, as a kind of metaphor. We can look at the sixth realm of existence like states of condition of the minds, condition of existence. It's the metaphor of our continuous changing of spirits. We constantly transmigrate in these six realms. We can see it in our daily life. We can see the six realms outside of us. When I go off from my house, I see all around me there are the six realms of existence. Maybe I meet a drug addict who is living in his continuous hell. Maybe I see a big manager, very powerful, like an Ashura. It's very powerful. He can decide the destiny of thousands of people, and he constantly fights against other manager for supremacy. And I see very rich peoples that live like devas. Or sometimes I have the unlucky situation to meet a very tough guy, very narrow-minded, a brute. And when we meet these people, we say, he's an animal. So we can meet this sixth realm when we go out of our houses. But we can live these six realms inside of us. Maybe I wake up in the morning, I rejoice of being in my house with my wife, with my dogs, in my garden, I'm in heaven. Then I have to go out and go to work, and being stuck into the chaos of Rome, into the traffic, and this is hell. And I go deep in hell. Then it's about noon, and I'm starving, I want to eat, and I became like an animal searching for some food. So we constantly change from realm to realm. And it's something that we can experience during our zazen. Maybe each one of us has experienced this kind of thing. Sometimes our zazen is like heaven. We feel so peaceful. We feel so blissful. And sometimes, most of the time, our zazen is like hell. We cannot find peace. It's restless. In Buddhism, there is a phrase that says, the time it takes to snap your fingers, 900 cycles of birth and death happens. Thoughts arise in occasion of the various circumstances, and we transmigrate immediately towards one of these realms. And thinking is something we cannot avoid. There is a very famous story about Hakuin, the Rinzai Zen master. He says, a soldier named Nobushige came to Hakuin and asked, is there really a paradise and a hell? Who are you? Inquired Hakuin. I am a samurai, the warrior replied. You, a soldier? Exclaimed Hakuin. What kind of ruler would have you as his guard? Your face looks like that of a beggar. Nobushige became so hungry that he began to draw his sword. But Hakuin continued, so you have a sword? Your weapon is probably much too dull to cut off my head. As Nobushige drew his sword, Hakuin remarked, here opens the gates of hell. At these words, the samurai, perceiving the master's discipline, sheathed his sword and bowed. Here opens the gates of paradise, said Hakuin. So, thoughts arise, and me, myself, project itself into one of these realms. And what we can do? Is there a way to end this process? Can we stop thinking? Once to the sixth patriarch, Wineng, A monk presented him a verse composed by another Zen teacher, Wulong. And the verse goes like this. Wulong has ways and means to cut off the movements of many thoughts. When the mind does not rise in reaction to circumstances, the tree of enlightenment will steadily grow. Here in this verse, Master Huineng said, this verse indicates that the person who composed it has not yet completely realized the essence of mind. The sixth patriarch then showed the monk the following verse. Huineng has no ways and means to cut off the movements of many thoughts. The mind is often rising in reaction to circumstances. How then can enlightenment grow? This is a kind of koan. We cannot stop thinking. We cannot avoid it. But maybe we can be aware of the process. We can realize the emptiness of the self, of the me-mind self, who project itself in the six realms. And we can go through these realms with a kind of openness of the mind, with the magnanimous mind of Daishin, of Dogen. And we can realize that these worlds, these realms, are mind themselves. Uchiyama says something like this in Opening the Hand of Thought. He says, in Pure Land and some other schools of Buddhism, we hear about paradise and hell. And in Christianity, heaven and hell. In our day-to-day lives, we hear about happiness and unhappiness, our or fortunate circumstances and unfortunate ones. We assume it to be perfectly natural that heaven, happiness, and fortunate circumstances are good, and that hell, unhappiness, and unfortunate circumstances are bad. This type of categorization or discrimination is nothing but a distinction we made in our minds, and is totally removed from the reality of life. Yet, precisely because of this distinction, we get all excited over wanting to go a better way and try not to go some worse way. As long as we act like this, we completely lose sight of absolute peace. The important point here, in terms of the truths of the universal self, is not to run away from the worst way, hell, unhappiness, or bad circumstances, and turn towards some better way, heaven, happiness, or good circumstances, by discriminating between better and worse using our heads. Rather, what is crucial is magnanimous mind, with which we take the attitude of living straight through whatever reality of life we are presented faced with. In other words, if I fall into hell, the hell itself is my life at that time. So I have to live right through it. And if I find myself in heaven, then heaven is my life. And I have to live right through that. And Katagiri Roshi too says, you cannot find any peace by escaping from human pain and suffering. You have to find peace and harmony right in the midst of human pain. That is the purpose of spiritual life. So maybe there is nowhere to get off from this transmigration. There is no way to escape from heaven and from hell. but we have to pass through it. In this sense, Suryo Suzuki Roshi said, hell is not punishment, it's training. Nobody wants to go to hell, but we go. Nobody wants to meet demons, but we meet them. In Christianity, there is this very strong image of Jesus Christ chasing away demons. Especially in the Mark Gospel, Jesus put a lot of emphasis on Jesus chasing away demons. I would like to give an example of this section. It comes from the Gospel of Mark. They went to Capharnaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teachings, because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teacher of the law. Just then, a man in their synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the only one of God." "Be quiet," said Jesus sternly. "Come out of him." The impure spirit shook the man violently and came out with a shriek. The people were also amazed that they asked each other, "What is this? A new teaching, and with authority. He even gives orders to impure spirits, and they obey him." That's a kind of example, and there are many of these, of Jesus chasing away demons. Zen monks, especially in medieval Japan, they chase demons in a certain way. One of the reasons why Soto Zen had a lot of popularity in medieval Japan is not for the Zen practice. It's because Soto Zen monk could tame demons, could tame the spirits of the earth. But the difference is from the chasing away demons of Jesus Christ, that they didn't destroy its demons. They simply tamed it. How they tamed demons? Bestowing the precepts. When they met demons, they give them the Buddhist precept. And what are demons for us, for me? Demons are those energies, or whatever you can call it, who divert us, who confuse us. There are these kind of energies that feed and grow on our weaknesses. Demons are not impressed by our sentenities, our knowledge, that we sometimes use to hide our insecurity. When they faced Jesus, they couldn't find any grip, any space to get into him, because he was the Son of God. He had the authority. They found any space. But to crawl into me, it's very easy for them. I'm not as stable as Jesus Christ. Demons are my mistakes, something I did wrong, how I address to someone, how I try to skip, how I try to avoid to do something. Demons are remorses, are fears, doubts, anger, greed. In other tradition, demons are expelled externally, go away. But in our Buddhist tradition, we do not destroy demons. We try to embrace demons. We try to accept them with compassion. In our daily life, it's quite easy to hide our demons somewhere because we have so many things to do. But when we stop, and especially when we sit zazen, our demons come out. And what we do in zazen, we do nothing. We try to embrace our demons, our problems, without trying to solve them. We try to embrace that which I don't like about myself, as myself. I am this too. I am this demon too. During zazen, we cannot help but sitting back to back with our demons. And we can only try to be compassionate with them. So maybe sometimes they lose their power. Only by facing ourselves without filter, we can recognize the true nature of the demons. During zazen, when I'm aware, if we open the hand of thought, in that space, angels and demons come and go, and they are carried by the same wind. I go back to Uchiyama Roshi, and in a certain place he quote Rinzai Kigen, the famous Rinzai Zen teacher. And the quote says, in the record of Rinchi, Rinzai Kigen says, the true practitioners of the way completely transcends all things. Even if heaven and earth were to tumble down, I would have no misgiving. Even if all the Buddhas in the 10 directions were to appear before me, I would not rejoice. Even if the 3 hells were to appear before me, I would have no fear. Why is this so? Because there is nothing to dislike. That's the end of the quote. And Ushiyama say, for Rinzai, the appearance of all the Buddhas in the past, present, and future was not something to rejoice over, nor was the appearance of the 3 hells something of which to be afraid. Of course, not being afraid of the appearance of some hells doesn't mean that for Rinzai hell had no existence. For him, hell was a kind of scenery that was different from the sceneries of the Buddhas. The point is that whatever some hell, all the Buddhas, or anything else appear before him, Rinzai saw all of this as the scenery of his life. For us, this is nothing but the scenery of our zazen. So, angels and demons are the scenery of our life, a part of our life. And they came from inside of us, not from outer space. They are carried by the same wind, that is the wind of the mind. And there is a quote from Eie Koroku I would like to read, in which for me it says something similar. It is Dharma Hall Discourse number 388. In ancient times, someone was up in a high tower and saw two monks walking by. This is a story from that is recorded in Ego Zenjin Shinyo, a collection on Yangwu Kegin's writings. Two heavenly beings were sweeping the road and scattered flowers behind the monks. When the two monks returned, two demons shouted and spit at the monks and swept away their footsteps. The person observing this finally descended from the tower and asked the two monks what had happened. The two monks said, "When we were going, we were discussing the principle of the Buddhas. When we were returning, we were engaged in random talk. This is the reason." Realizing this deeply, the two monks were repentant and continued on their way. And then Dogen says, "Listen, although this story concerned the two monks' coarse realms of consciousness, if we examine it minutely, this is the most important aspect of people's study the way. Why is that so? It is because when even a bit of sentimental thinking arises, external conditions appear before us. If such thought do not arise, there can be no particular condition." An ancient, Yangwu Kegin, said, "Although it was like this, it was exactly because those heavenly beings scattered flowers on the road that the demonic spirits could see the two monks. If there had been no road upon which the heavenly being could scatter flowers, and there were no means for the demonic spirits to observe them, then what would have happened?" To our eyes, and demons and angels comes. Demon and angels are bound together. They depend upon each other. But we can stop the thinking. There is a category of these demons, which I'm very familiar to, is the Gaki, the hungry ghost. There is a sutra that is called the Kanromon, means the Ambrosia Gate, that the purpose of this sutra is to feed this hungry ghost. With this sutra, we feed the hungry ghost with the spiritual food, because chanting this sutra, there are a lot of dharani in there, kind of mantra, that are like a spiritual food for these ghosts. And once in a month at my center, we do perform this Kanromon, this feeding the hungry ghost ceremony. Gaki are beings that need help and food. They have no relative that could perform a ritual for them, that could perform funerals or memorial service for them. So we do. In Catholicism too, there is something like that. You can perform mass for your dead relatives or for the souls of the purgatory. This kind of mass is like kind of help for these souls. And I think that it's very nice for me that Soto Zen has this kind of a special relationship with the demons, ghosts, and dead peoples. And why? Because they need help. For example, ghost, the image of the ghost is of a creature who would have left something behind them, something unsolved, some remorse, some rancor. There is a very famous Japanese horror movie that is about ghosts, that is called Ju-hon, the grudge. And the demons, they are hungry because they are rancor, they are remorses. And in Japanese iconography, they depict ghosts in a very particular manners. They are like this, or like this. And there is a specific symbology for this. They have a long and furry hair. That is the symbol that they are linked to the past. They have craving hands. That is the symbol that they crawl for the future. They have no foot, no feet. It means they do not live in the present moment. They are somewhere else, lost in the past, or longing for the future that will not come. The Japanese medieval priests, Soto Zen priests, they bestowed precept to this ghost. And what are precepts if not a tool to face the present? What are precepts if not a way to be grounded in the present moment? In a certain ways, bestowing precept to the ghost is something like giving them the feet to stay and to peace themselves, not to be lost in the past or to crave for the future. And so when we do perform the Karomon at our centers, and I talk about the Gaki, these are the Gaki. And I say to the practitioner to look at the Gaki as a symbol of our greed and insatiable minds. And I say, think about the Gaki when you perform this sutra. Think about the Gaki as a part of us. A part of us that has some regrets. Or you can think of the Gaki about thinking about someone which not something with. And people do like to perform this ritual. And during the Kanromon, during this sutra, we recall the Gaki. We summon the Gaki. The first part is we say, please come. So we try to recognize the Gaki. Okay. If the Gaki comes, the Gaki that is the part of me, the Gaki of the unsolved stuff with someone. And then we feed them with compassion. So we bring them to the light and we feed them with spiritual food. But we try not to identify ourselves with them. They are part of us, but they are not us. They are our greed, they are our habits, our laziness. We recognize, we feed them with spiritual food. The Dharani is the symbol of the teaching of the Buddha. And the teaching of the Buddha is something that's awake from the sleep of illusion. And then we let them go. This is for me the real exorcism that we have to perform. We let them go because we recognize that they are emptiness, as we are. They are made from the same emptiness which is our essence. So, in that way, we recognize that our skandhas, that can be demons, can become enlightenment. So we don't identify ourselves with them, but at the same time we are not separate from them. And the action of the bodhisattva, because what we do feeding the hungry ghost is the bodhisattva action, must have the founding of the prajna, of the wisdom, of emptiness. In the Diamond Sutra, maybe you know, Subhuti asked Buddha, Lord, how then should we instruct those who wish to take the bodhisattva vow? Tell them that if they wish to attain the perfect enlightenment, which transcends comparisons, they must be resolved in their attitudes. They must be determined to liberate each living being. Yet, they must understand that in reality there are no individual or separate living beings. Subhuti, to be called a bodhisattva in truth, a bodhisattva must be completely devoid of any conceptions of separate selfhood. So when we feed the hungry ghost, when we feed the demons, we make a bodhisattva action, but we know that we are not separate from them because we are emptiness. And if there is a demon in Buddhism, if there is something very a demon is the separation, is the discrimination, to consider us separate from others. There is an episode of the gospel in which Jesus chases away demons, and he asks to the demons, "What is thy name?" And the demon answer, "My name is Legions, because we are many." We are many. Sometimes we are many, but in reality we are not many. We are one. And I don't know if you know that the word devil, the Italian diavolo, comes from the Greek diaballo, that means separate, that means divide. And of course, in Christianity, the devil is the one who separates us from God. But looking from my perspective, the demon is the separation. The demon is discrimination. So I think that is something we can try to experience when we face our demons. That we face them and we think we are separate from them. But when we realize that we are not separate, we can feed them with compassion and let them go. Thank you for listening. Sorry for my bad English. I don't know if you have any comments on any simple question.
How does Soto Zen treat the psychological perspective of our humans? In other words, our experiences, our genetic heritage, our families, the experiences we've had growing up. In other words, our karma, basically, gives us or waters the seeds of of anger, of greed, of delusion, of ignorance, of jealousy, of defense, fear, all the things that we've had in our life as we have grown. And they manifest inside of us as thoughts, as fears, and then sometimes as actions. Is that recognized in a psychological sense that each one of us has these capacities? All humans have these capacities, and we have to become aware of this, and we have to look at them with compassion and understand where they came from. and then slowly let them go when we have a deep understanding of ourselves and what we've been through.
I think yes, it's something we learn to face with.
Yeah, and then we can also understand when other people, if someone
of course,
is angry and is making us suffer, we can understand that they indeed are suffering themselves.
Of course.
And we can understand that we could be in the same place as them.
Yeah. To recognize this, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes there are demons that overwhelm me, and I think totally lacking possession. Sometimes I can recognize them, where they came from my experience, from my family. I can recognize them as kind of my karma. For example, I'm kind of quite an emotional guy, and a lot of anxieties. And when I see them, I see the face of my mother, because my mother is like this. It's something that has transmitted from me. And so I think yes, so we can recognize them. It's one of the things I say to the children and they became kind of overwhelmed or upset. They say that there is no bad person in the world. Even the terrorist who goes into a supermarket with bombs and make himself explode is not a bad person. He's a person who is moved by fears. He's moved by some kind of unsolved things. For me, I think that the most powerful demon I have to face is fear. And for me, fear is the demon who causes all the problems in the society, in the human world. Wars comes from fears. The pollution, the exploitation of the planets comes from fears. So that's a kind of demons. When those fears come from? Fears come from my contracted sense of myself. So even if I know where those fear come from, it's very difficult for me to relate this with. But still, little by little, I'm facing. It's a life process.
Thank you.